Greetings, fellow lords and ladies. While I look at Game of Thrones Season 5, now continues on with the episode Hardhome. So, beginning in Meereen, in the throne room, Daenerys ponders on what to do with Tyrion and Jorah. She asks Tyrion why she shouldn't kill him, since the Lannisters are enemies to her house. He claims to have killed both of his parents, and by that he is an enemy to the Lannisters as well. Daenerys is convinced that killing one's own family is a good reputation for someone in her service. Tyrion counters by wondering aloud if she is at least worth its service. Ordered to tell her why he has come to her from the other end of the world, he explained how he learned about her own story from rumors and from Varys. He says that she, a lost girl born in a storm, who with virtually no assistance managed to acquire a barbarian horde, an effective army, conquer 3 cities, break the slave trade and hatch 3 dragons, might be worth living for when he lost everything he had lived for until then. He adds that Daenerys needs his advice despite having a powerful army of large dragons, and she lacks both political experience and practical knowledge of Westeros. She eventually agrees to spare his life, but asks what to do about Ser Jorah. She seems poised to fulfill her promise of killing him if she saw him again, as it would not do at all for a queen not to keep her word. Tyrion defends Jorah, commenting that he is clearly devoted to her and quite possibly in love with her, but also that he did not trust her enough to inform her of his mission to spy on her for King Robert, and that therefore he cannot be trusted to stand by her side. But, he argues, just as a queen should keep true to her oaths, she should also not kill those devoted to her. Daenerys exiles Jorah from the city. Contemplating his grayscale, Jorah turns to Yezenzo Kogas and offers to fight for him. He promises Yezen's team to the Great Pit and win the tournament for the Queen. After that, Yezen can make a fortune selling Jorah on the black market. Later, Tyrion and Daenerys sit in her solar and have a talk about ambitions. When Tyrion mentions what horrible father Tywin was, Daenerys admits that she no longer has any illusions about her own father. Daenerys is curious about the circumstances of Tyrion's murder of Tywin. He rarely promises that if she decides not to kill him, then one day he will tell her. But on that day, they will need a lot more wine than the large decanter they are drinking from. They discuss the role of Varys in their stories, and Tyrion assures Daenerys he trusts him, and that he is possibly the reason she wasn't killed years ago. Tyrion was convinced by Varys that she could be a ruler who deserves his support. Daenerys decides Tyrion will remain as her advisor, but confiscates the wine, as a drunk is of no use to her. When Tyrion asks Daenerys what she wants to be advised on, Tyrion nearly rolls his eyes at her desire for the Iron Throne. He suggests that she might want to stay in Slaver's Bay and build a new kingdom for herself in Meereen, complimenting her on reopening the fighting pits and her upcoming political marriage. She assures him that she will stay and help stabilize things to make sure that the slave trade stays broken, but Essos is not her home. Tyrion asks who will support in Westeros, to which Daenerys somewhat idealistically answers that the common people will support her. Tyrion generously assumes that this will happen, which it generally doesn't. Tyrion then asks Daenerys what ruling Meereen, with the support of only the common folk while not having the support of the rich, was like. Meereen has been a state of chaos without the combined support of the Grey Masters and the small folk, and extends this to Westeros and its great houses. He knows that houses Targaryen and Stark are effectively dead due to the combined actions of their 2 terrible fathers. Neither House Lannister nor House Baratheon of Dragonstone will ever support her claim in light of their histories with the Targaryens. Tyrion insists that this leaves House Tyrell, who might be willing to switch sides due to Cersei's recent schemes against them, but that it's still not enough. Daenerys stubbornly likens the great houses, including her own House Targaryen, to the spokes on a wheel, one on top and then others, and on, crushing the commerce beneath them in their struggle for supremacy. Tyrion sarcastically warns that others have dreamed of stopping the wheel, but Daenerys clarifies that she plans to break it. Anyway, in Braavos, Arya assumes the identity of Lana, a clam seller, and so is Jack and Nagar she can convincingly become a different person, developing an elaborate and very believable backstory. The Faceless Man sends her, as Lana, to the harbor where she observes someone referred to as the Thin Man, refuse a contract to insure a man's boat, leaving the man in desperate circumstances. Jack explains the Thin Man's business is a sort of gamble, yet he does not honor his agreements. When a ship captain dies at sea, he was supposed to make good his promise to pay the family, but he often doesn't. Jack instructs her to kill him and hands her a gift for the man, a vial of poison. The wife is skeptical of Arya/Lana's success. Anyway, in King's Landing, Septa Unella continues to demand Cersei to confess in return for her freedom. She remains defiant, despite being obliged to drink water from the floor out of sheer thirst. Qyburn visits her in her cell and informs her that her trial will begin soon for the crimes of fornication, treason, incest, and Robert's murder, all of which Cersei fiercely dismisses as lies. Qyburn then tells her the Grand Maester Pycelle has summoned Kevin Lannister to serve as hand of the king. Kevin has, at this point in time, already arrived and has refused to visit her in prison. Qyburn also tells her that Tommen has become reclusive, refusing to see anyone and refusing to eat in his emotional state. Before leaving, he tells her the work continues on their secret project. Anyway, at Winterfell, a bitter and determined Sansa confronts Reek about his latest betrayal. Reek apologetically affirms that he was helping her and that there was no escaping Ramsay. He tells her that Theon Greyjoy tried to escape and Ramsay caught him and tortured him until there was no Theon left. Sansa coldly expresses approval and reminds Reek of the role he played in her family's downfall, and that if she could do to him what Ramsay did, she would. Reek shamefully admits he deserved his torture as did terrible things, specifically killing those boys. Enraged by his dismissive reference seemingly to her brother as those boys, rather than Bran and Rickon, Sansa vehemently demands to know why they should be dead while he still breathes the air, forcing Reek to finally admit that they were not in fact Bran and Rickon, only two farm boys. Stunned by this admission, Sansa's anger towards Reek cools, but when she presses him as to where they might have gone, calling him Theon again, he breaks in and runs out of the room, crying, "Not Theon! Reek!" Roose Bolton maintains that his army must wait inside Winterfell, the starving of Sansa's forces, as Winterfell had enough supplies to last 6 months under siege. Such conditions caused a mutiny in the ranks of the Baratheon force to break them down. Ramsay, on the other hand, has a plan to defeat Stannis decisively and asks his father to lend him just 20 good men. Anyway, at the Wall, Gilly continues to tend to Sam's wounds. All he enters was the food, having heard what happened. Once Gilly leaves, Ollie expresses concern at joining forces with the Wildlings, particularly Tormund, who led the raid in which his parents were killed. Sam assures Ollie that Jon knows what he is doing, and that unless he is successful, neither Night's Watch nor Westeros stands a chance against the White Walkers. Sam explains that this is a hard choice Jon had to make, however unpopular, and then tells him not to worry, as Jon always comes back. Ollie appears unconvinced. And then finally, at Hardhome, Jon Snow and Tormund, along with other members of Night's Watch and the Free Folk, arrive at the wildling town Hardhome to convince the rest of the wildlings to join them in the upcoming war against the White Walkers and their armies of whites. Insisting on never being an ally with the Crow, the Lord of Bones assaults Tormund for being at the side of an enemy like Jon Snow. Tormund seizes the Lord's staff and beats his former ally to death with it. The Welling elders decide to gather the townsfolk to hear out Jon's proposal. An alliance between the Free Folk and the Night's Watch in the face of their common enemy, the undead. Having not seen Mance Rayder since he was taken prisoner at the Wall, the Wildlings question his whereabouts. Snow reluctantly informs him that he is dead and that he shot him personally with an arrow. The group is infuriated, but as they move in to kill him, Tormund vouches for him, describing how Rayder was about to be burned at the stake as a warning from Stannis Baratheon, and how Snow defied Stannis by ending his life quickly instead of humiliating him and making him suffer in the flames. Some leaders are convinced, such as Carsey and the giant One, but others like the thin warrior Loboda begin to leave. Jon offers him the dragonglass daggers, telling them that his friend had killed a White Walker with one. The wildlings still seem unconvinced. While approximately 5,000 free folk gather to set sail to the Wall, the Night's Watch starts gathering the dragonglass daggers in the tent. Ed approaches One who holds one of the daggers, examining it curiously. The giant appears unwilling to hand it over and asks Ed, and sorry for the language here, but "the fuck you looking at?" in the giant's rudimentary form of the old tongue. Ed walks away quietly, without collecting the arrowhead. Suddenly, dogs begin barking and the sounds of the storm are heard. Recognizing the sign of approaching White Walkers, Loboda orders the gates of Hardhome to be shut, abandoning many of the free folk on the other side to their fate. As the storm reaches the village, the The screams of the people shut outside the walls of Hardhome quickly fall silent. A moment later, a large host of undead wights begin breaking through the gates and climbing over the walls. John, Torment, Laboda, and Carsey fight alongside others to give as many people as possible an opportunity to make it to their ships. Edison Tollett, One, and others are trapped inside the town hall, which is set upon by wights and catches fire. In the confusion, the bag of dragonglass weapons is lost. On top of a hill overlooking Hardhome, several White Walkers mounted on undead horses observe the battle, including the Night King. Noticing them and realizing the need for dragonglass, John and Laboda go to the burning town hall, only to be confronted by a White Walker warrior. While Laboda faces the threat, Jon Snow goes for the dragonglass. Laboda is quickly killed after his axe shatters immediately upon contacting the White Walker's ice blade. Jon just manages to grab a dragonglass dagger, but is tossed aside by the White Walker. Jon retrieves a longclaw and defends himself against the White Walker, and both combatants are astonished to see the Valyrian steel remain intact after colliding with the White Walker's blade. Seizing the opportunity, Jon strikes the White Walker, shattering his body into fragments of ice, confirming that Valyrian steel is just as lethal to them as dragonglass. The Night King, watching the entire battle from a distance, seems at least mildly intrigued by this turn of events. Meanwhile, Carsey fights off multiple wights before being confronted by a pack of undead children. Frozen by the horror, she isn't able to resist as she is mauled to death. The White Walkers deploy another large host of wights, letting them hurl themselves over the cliffs above Hardhome. Jon, Ed, Tormund, and the remaining defenders flee for their lives. Shielded by One, who throws several wights off himself and wields a burning log as a club before walking into sea with them, they manage to get to the last remaining boat and quickly row to a safe distance. As Jon and the others look on in horror, the Night King raises his arms triumphantly. All around it, the slain wildlings rise up as undead wights, including Carsey. The Night King and his army continue to stare in silence as they retreat. Dun dun dun. Okay, there we go. Alright, so let's take a look at some behind-the-scenes notes from this episode. The episode takes its title from Hardhome, the wildling settlement beyond the wall, where the entire second half of the episode takes place. House Martell and Dorne do not appear in this episode, nor do Jaime and Bronn, who are also currently in Dorne. Excuse me. Stannis Baratheon and his forces do not appear in this episode, though they are discussed. Brienne of Tarth does not appear in this episode. King's Landing and associated storylines barely appear. Only Cersei Lannister in her prison cell is directly shown, though Qyburn fills her in on changes which have occurred in the small council outside. Similarly, the associate House Tyrell characters in the storyline do not appear, though they are discussed. House Greyjoy does not appear and has not appeared all season. Much of the episode focuses on Arya and Braavos and the Night's Watch in the titular Hardhome storyline. Executive producers David Benioff and D.B. Weiss themselves explain in the Inside the Episode featurette. While the events at Hardhome apparently do happen in the novels, they are off-screen, because neither Jon Snow nor any other POV characters go there. Jon sends an expeditionary force led by Cotter Pike, commander of Eastwatch by the Sea, who sends messenger ravens to keep Jon informed of his status. The last that Jon hears from them as of the end of the most recent novel is a frantic and hastily written letter pleading for help, saying that they are surrounded by dead things in the woods and even dead things in the water, perhaps whites wading through the bay to attack their undefended side. Benioff and Weiss explained that they felt it was important to actually show what happened and send Jon Snow along as a POV character the audience is familiar with. Because Jon doesn't go to Hardhome in the novels, he doesn't go there to meet with the remaining wildling chieftains. Instead, much of the fifth novel involves him negotiating with the wildling leaders, both captured and not, at or near Castle Black following their defeat by Stannis. Ultimately, many agreed to his terms because they know that to stay north of the wall with the White Walkers is certain death, though a large number fled back to Hardhome. The decision to actually show the massacre at Hardhome, or at least make it a major set battle sequence near the climax of the season, was actually made relatively late in production on season 5, after extensive rewrites. Snorri Porison, sorry if I mispronounced that, the line producer in Iceland, explained in July 2014 that the original plan was to film the Hardhome sequence there in November 2015, because other scenes set beyond the wall were filmed on location in Iceland. After rewrites to increase the size and scale of the battle sequence at Hardhome, these plans were cancelled. Instead, a fully realized set was built on location at Maker Harrimore, south from Mercedes, Quarry, Northern Ireland, the same quarry where the Castle Black set is located. A larger fight sequence meant they needed 3 full weeks to film the battle, and the window for filming during Iceland's winter months was too small to accommodate it. These rewrites may have led to several continuity errors with the rest of the Night's Watch storyline later in Season 5. The battle sequence at Hardhome took a full 15 days to film and involved about 400 extras and 50 stuntmen. Ultimately, about 220 extras were used. After training the original set in fighting moves, the producers held tryouts by having them mock fight each other. They picked who felt they were the best. They felt were the best ones. Hardhome was built as a fully set in Maker Harrimore Quarry. Not only the buildings were real, but the entire wood log palisade wall, which was about 300 feet long and 18 feet high. At one point, many wildlings started panicking and tried to rush the boats on the shore to escape, but too many pile in, causing some of them to capsize. This was achieved entirely with practical effects. The production team actually brought a crane in to pull ropes which swept over a roaring boat containing 15 stuntmen. The lake of the quarry was freezing, and a safety team was present in the water just off camera in scuba gear to try to rescue anyone in case it got trapped or knocked unconscious. At one point, Benioff and Weiss's script for the battle was on an even larger scale, showing the army of the dead slaughtering the tens of thousands of wildlings camped outside of the palisade walls, with vast big camera shots. As explained with a chuckle in a behind-the-scenes featurette, director Miguel Sapochnik had to rein back the scale of what was shown, pointing out to them that it was well beyond what their budget would allow. Instead, Sapochnik suggested that only the fight within the palisade walls be shown, as the wildlings struggled to keep the whites from breaking in. The slaughter of the thousands of wildlings outside the walls is only heard as muffled screams through the walls. Benioff and Weiss liked this idea, not just because it would cost less, because they realized one of the rules of horror film is that what's directly not seen but only hinted at is much more scary. As to be expected in a meeting with all the remaining chieftains of the wildlings, several varying wildling groups are clearly shown in this episode. Some may have first appeared in the battle for the wall last season, but they were difficult to see in large crowd shots at night. Costume designer Michelle Clapton explained that she developed 6 different wildling subgroups by costuming, based on their geographic region. Mansour and Johnson repeatedly said that in the present day there are about 90 different wildling clans, but each large region has multiple clans in it, i.e., there may be over a dozen clans of Hornfoots. While Clapton did say that there were 6 different large wildling subgroups in the TV series, she did not list all of them, except to say that the Thuns were one. She also didn't specify if she included the giants in this count. Based on her descriptions, however, the 6 groups appear to be 1. The main generic wildlings from the haunted forest, the vast Daiko forest which covers most of the lands beyond the wall. By far the most numerous, they wear heavy animal furs from game they hunt in the forest. Mance, Tormund, and Egret appear to be from this group. 2. Wildlings who live close to the coast and thus decorate their clothing with more seashells. This may be the TV version of the frozen shore tribes who have been mentioned in the histories and lower featurettes. The lands they live in are desolate, but the surrounding waters are plentiful, so they gain most of their sustenance from the sea. They cross the snow on sleds of walrus tusks, pulled by dogs. Crossing dogs appear to be from this coastal group, given the seashell decorations of our clothing. 3. Wildlings who live up in the Frostfang Mountains. Little grows there. While a few animals live there don't make for good furs, so they just decorate themselves with bits of bone from whatever small game they can hunt. The Lord of Bones and his followers are from this group. They may be the TV version of the Hornfoot people, which hosters in lore videos describe as living in the mountains. 4. The Cave People, clearly seen during the meeting with the elders. They are notable for wearing face paint, which is how the novel described them. They don't just live around the mountains like the other group, but inside the cave systems of the Frostfangs. 5. The Thens, fierce warriors who wield their own bronze axes. previously led by Ster, now led by Loboda at the meeting. And 6. The non-human race of giants, previously led by Magmar Tung Do Wei, or Meg the Mighty, now represented by One Wig One Dar One, or One One. Clapton's concept for the giants is that they just continually wrap their bodies with whatever scraps of cloth, fur, or animal bone they can find, haphazardly wrapped in materials almost like a mummy. This episode reveals that Valerian steel is resistant to the White Walker's weapons and lethal to the walkers themselves. In the novels, Samuel Charlie reads over old books containing legends about the White Walkers and the first war against them in the Long Night 8,000 years ago, as we've seen doing a few episodes ago, and discusses two things with John. First, he notes that besides dragon glass, obsidian, it is also mentioned that dragon steel can kill White Walkers. Both of them suspect that this refers to Valerian steel, which was forged in dragon fire, such as John's sword Longclaw. They don't know if the legend is true, however, and have not yet had a chance to test this information in the novels. This TV episode, however, confirms that Valerian steel can indeed kill a White Walker. This makes John only the second character in the TV series to have killed a White Walker. He has not yet in the novels because he didn't attend the fight of the fist and didn't go to Hardhome, after Samuel killed one back in season 3. John is also the only one to have killed a White, Uther back in season 1, many more now. Though in novels, Samuel also killed a White when he was fleeing south back to the wall with Gilly. Interestingly, both weapons that are lethal to White Walkers are not particularly useful against their minions. Sam discovered it by trial and error in the novels. As he and Gilly are attacked by a White, he stabs it at its back with a dragonglass dagger, but the dagger shatters to pieces. Sam manages to kill it by shoving a piece of burning wood in its mouth, setting it ablaze. Dragonglass isn't very useful against Whites because it is very sharp but very brittle, shattering if used as a sword, better used as arrowheads and daggers. Against Whites, dragonglass is just a sharp but brittle blade, when what is really needed are numerous hacking attacks to physically carve them apart. In contrast, a Valerian steel sword is entirely useless, but unlike against the White Walkers, against the Whites it is just a very sharp and very strong sword, which can cut through objects better than other weapons. Fire is still the best way to kill Whites because they are very flammable, as if their flesh was coated in pitch. Even a small flame will make their entire body quickly catch fire. Samuel asks Melisandre about this in novels, saying, quote, "The dragonglass only shudder when I try to stab a White," and she smiles and answers, "Necromancy animates these Whites, yet they are still only dead flesh. Steel and fire will serve for them. The ones who call the others are something more." In the novels, the White Walkers are eternally called the Others. Unfortunately, in the novels, it is stated that there are only around 200 Valerian steel weapons remaining in Westeros, mostly swords, but few daggers or even axes. After the doom of Valyria 400 years ago, the secret of making new Valerian steel was lost, making them incredibly rare and priceless. There are also surviving Valerian steel weapons in Essos, but they were few in number to begin with, and many destroyed in the doom itself. As explained last season, a few very skilled blacksmiths in the Free Cities have figured out how to reforge pre-existing Valerian steel, i.e., the House Stark heirloom greatsword ice was melted down into regular-sized longswords, but the remaining amount is finite. Even after the doom, when the Targaryens took the only surviving dragons to Westeros, they lost the knowledge of how to make new Valerian steel, so even though Daenerys has new dragons, it is unknown if they could ever be used to forge new Valerian steel weapons. Brienne of Tarth was given one of those two Valerian steel swords made from Ned Stark's sword, which she named Oathkeeper. In the novels, the cold from the White Walkers' ice blades and perhaps their own bodies can shatter steel weapons used against them, though not by instantly. When Waymar Royce fights them in the prologue at the beginning of the first novel, he pairs a few blows, but his sword quickly becomes covered in frost, then shatters after a few hits. When their ice blades initially hit his sword, they are described as making an unusual high-pitched noise. Not the ring of metal against metal or metal against ice, but only a high, thin sound at the edge of hearing, like an animal screaming in pain. The TV series changed it slightly so that any normal iron weapon they made contact with will instantly shatter on the first blow from the cold. That may be why Moore's sword survived a few blows, because it was high-quality steel, as he was a rich nobleman, and low-quality iron weapons won't even last that long. The TV show kept the detail that any blade that the White Walker's ice crystal weapons make contact with, if it doesn't shatter, will make a strange high-pitched ringing noise when John parries with Longclaw. Sam also finds references to in old annals to ice spiders. He and John do not dwell on the issue, because John's more interested to know how the others can be destroyed. Old Nan mentioned them to Bran when she told him about the White Walkers of the Long Night, both in the books and in the show. As at the end of the most recent novel, such creatures have not appeared yet. In this episode, Lobotta that then scoffs at the legends that dragonglass can kill White Walkers, comparing them to legends that the Walkers also have giant ice spiders, in which Carsey earnestly chastises him that they've given him that given everything they've seen, there was no reason to doubt any of the legends about the White Walkers anymore. This episode seems to have revealed the identity of the White Walker's master, the White Walker with crown-like horns, first seen in Season 4, Episode 4, Oathkeeper. If this character exists in the novels, he has not appeared at all yet. When the episode aired, the HBO viewer's guide briefly listed him as the Night's King, for hastily being corrected to remove this. It was unknown if this description was simply a mistake, or if it as an accidental leak of information. For this episode, during the Inside the Episode featurette, Benioff and Weiss constantly referred to him as the Night King, and the viewer's guide official synopsis also refers to him as the Night King. In the novels, and also explained in the animated Blu-ray featurettes from past seasons, the original character known as the Night's King was the 13th Lord Commander of the Night's Watch, who lived long after the wall was constructed 8,000 years ago. For comparison, Jon Snow was the 998th Lord Commander. According to legend, he was seduced by a White Walker woman from beyond the wall, fell under the thrall, and declared himself the Night's King, ruling the wall like his own kingdom, and leading the Black Brothers to conduct human sacrifices. The Stark King in the north and King beyond the wall, Jormungand, eventually went so far as to join their forces to defeat him, and they were formed the Night's Watch. At the end of the fall of the Night's King, it is said he was killed. This leads to several questions. Is the White Walker leader seen in this episode the same character as Night's King? It was revealed that humans can be turned to White Walkers, as even Craster's son back in Oathkeeper. On the other hand, is Night's King a title like King of the North or Storm King, so that there can be more than one? While the legendary figure is called the Night's King, BFO as well as the official synopsis constantly referred to the figure in this episode as the Night King, without a possessive S. It is unclear if this distinction is significant. Game of Thrones Wiki managed to contact George R. R. Martin and ask about whether they should be treated as two separate characters or not. He carefully avoided answering the question, but pointed out that Night's King with the possessive S is the form I prefer. The novels have never actually depicted corpses being raised by the White Walkers as undead whites, so it was unclear what the process entailed, i.e., spell incantations of some kind. It does seem to happen very fast. After Waymar Royce is killed in the prologue, Will hides for some time in a tree, only to be attacked by the now white Waymar. So it seemed to be something the Walkers could do fairly quickly. This episode reveals that the process is very fast and very simple. The White Walker leader just raises his arm silently, at which the thousands of corpses in the area twitch for a few seconds and spring back up, opening their eyes to reveal they are now glowing blue. The not-so-chill wildlings do know that whites are very flammable. It seems that the White Walkers commanded a wave of cold wind to blast through Hardhome that put out all their fires. Whites are incredibly durable in the novels, a bit more than the TV series has been able to show. Whites are not like classic zombies, in which destroying the head or the brain will kill them, but that every part of white, including severe severed limbs, will keep moving as long as it has enough muscles and joints left to give it basic motility. Jon Snow killed Othar after he reanimated as the White back in season 1. It even cut up Othar's forearm without even phasing him. And in the book's version of this scene, however, Othar's severed arm continues crawling around on the floor. The TV episode just displayed White's taking an immense amount of damage and still trying to attack. As White with the entire left half of his head is missing, a White with an arrow going completely through his skull and brain, and White's cut in half at the waist, still trying to move. Using swords or melee weapons can incapacitate White somewhat, but it's not as nearly as effective as fire. Characters seen hacking Whites apart limb by limb to at least stop their advance. The executive producers also point out in the inside the episode featurette that a wave of Whites charge headlong over a cliff like lemmings to get inside the walls, only to keep advancing, to highlight just how much of a beating Whites can take and the extent to which they mindlessly ignore any pain. Because the Whites that fall off the cliff onto the ground seem to have seamlessly transitioned into getting back up and attacking, interacting with the other actors, they couldn't be CGI for the entire shot. Instead, the semi-plane the Whites fell from a safe height onto a box rig, so they would realistically bounce when they hit the ground before getting up again to fight. Excuse me. Truly skeletal and relatively fast Whites first appeared in the season 4 finale The Children, and is seen and acknowledged to be an homage to Jason and the Argonauts. The Whites in this episode are shown in varying states of decomposition, from freshly dead to nearly completely skeletal. Whites in the novels are not lumbering, but they are not fast either, more or less how the White Oath Lord was depicted when Jon Snow fought him in Season 1. While this may have started as an homage to Season 4, director Mikhail Sapochnik explained that Benioff and Weiss stressed to him that they wanted to visually distinguish Whites from more traditional zombies, such as featured on The Walking Dead, apparently worried that in the visual medium of television, audiences would find them too generic. Sapochnik said, quote, "Movement was a big thing, making them feel like they swarmed where possible. The writers wanted to distinguish them as not zombies. They are puppets for the Night King, and I don't think they could just pick a target and go after it until it's dead, or they are cut into enough pieces that they can't chase anymore," end quote. Whites in the novels are not exactly like zombies. They can't turn other people into Whites with infectious bites. Every body part keeps moving, even if amputated, etc. The term revenant is a closer description. On filming the battle sequence, Sapochnik said, quote, "I look for an emotional and dramatic spine to the sequence, whatever it is. In this instance, it struck me that this is not a battle. It's a massacre. Instead of just an action sequence, I wanted to make it a tragedy," end quote. The heavy metal band Mastodon from Atlanta, Georgia made a cameo appearance as background wildlings in the battle who get killed and later reanimated as Whites. Will O'Connell first appeared in the Season 3 finale Maisha, credited only as Night's Watchman. This episode later identifies his character as Totter, who was first mentioned in Season 1's You Win or You Die. In case there was any confusion for viewers based on audiovisual format, when Loboto accuses that as soon as they are on the Watch's ships, they will slit their throats and dump their corpses into the shivering sea, he is just being descriptive. The actual name of the ocean north of the Narrow Sea, which borders the northern Hardhome, is the Shivering Sea. Further south of Bravos is located at the northwestern corner of Essos, where the North Sea joins the Shivering Sea. Christopher Hivju, sorry I mispronounced that name, broke all four of the prop sticks he was given to beat the Lord of Bones to death with. Kersey saying to Tormund that I fucking hate thens after Loboto's being obstinate is a callback to when Tormund said the same line in the Season 4 premiere, Two Swords. When the crowd of wildling leaders reacted to Jon saying they shot Mance Rayder as a mercy kill, one of the background actresses shouted, "You fucking cunt!" very loud and clear in every single take. It wasn't in the script, and the production team thought it was too distracting, so as to be lost in the babble of the shouting during post-production audio editing. The white boy that leads the attack against Carsey is actually a 23-year-old man previously used as a stand-in for Peter Dinklage. They used him instead of a child actor because the extensive makeup and rehearsal required a large amount of time to set up. As a legal adult, he could work for longer hours than a child actor could. In the original script, the giant 1-1 was going to use a large whalebone as a weapon, but this was later changed to a log he grabbed. The show producer explained the change as, quote, because one prefers logs, end quote. Apparently, Johnson only managed to evacuate fewer than 5,000 wildlings from Hardhome, as the rest were not yet willing to go, and they didn't have time to get on the ships once the White Walkers attacked. They're not necessarily the only surviving wildlings, and Stans and John mentioned that they took a large number of wildlings prisoner after the Battle of the Wall, some of whom were seen in chains along with Tormund in the Season 5 premiere. Many hundreds of thousands also died when Stannis' attack took them by surprise. The novels, because John and Tormund don't actually go to Hardhome, various wildling warbands have simply fled into the surrounding forest and splintered into different groups around Mance's lieutenants like Tormund. John eventually negotiates to just let them through the wall's tunnel, and no one has yet returned from Hardhome. Tyrion Lannister's storyline has officially passed as material for the end of the fifth, the most recent novel, at which point he was a Marine and had caught sight of Daenerys from the fighting pits, but had not met her yet. They were on the verge of meeting and will in the next novel. That said, Tyrion's scenes with Daenerys in this episode are generally keeping with the characters and their backstories, discussing how as the children of Tywin Lannister and Aerys' second Targaryen, the Mad King, they both had terrible fathers. That was Tyrion's brother Jaime who killed her father at the end of the rebellion, etc. Tyrion's line to Daenerys that his mother Joanna Lannister died giving birth to him is actually the first time that her full name has been mentioned in dialogue in the TV series, though it has appeared in unofficial family trees released by HBO since Season 1. The only people who have discussed her so far were her children or their father Tywin, so understandably, they just referred to her as Mother or Your Mother without giving her full name. Actually, Joanna was Tywin's first cousin, and her full name was thus already Joanna Lannister even before she married him. First cousin marriage is fairly common among the nobility in Westeros and is not considered incest. Tyrion manages to pass into Daenerys that his sister Cersei had her own husband, King Robert Baratheon, killed. Cersei admits this to Tyrion in the novels, but there was no corresponding scene in the TV series. Apparently he either pieced it together or she simply told him off screen. In the novels, soon after Tyrion arrives at King's Landing, he asks Cersei about the situation, and she bluntly admits to him that she had Robert killed. He responds by asking how she killed Jon Arryn, which evokes a surprised reaction, and she denies having anything to do with Lord Arryn's death. This leaves Tyrion confused, because given that Cersei just freely admitted that she killed her own husband, the king, she has no reason to lie about killing Arryn. One of the first hints that it wasn't really the Lannisters who killed him, as was assumed in the first novel. Spoilers, but actually Littlefinger. Tyrion mentions to Daenerys that he suspects that whilst King Robert's spy master Varys was in charge of assassination plots against her, given that he was secretly a Targaryen loyalist, he was probably intentionally setting each plan to fail, and was also protecting Daenerys for the past 20 years. Varys did send the wine cellar to Vast Jodrak in Season 1 to give her poisoned wine, but it was never confirmed if Varys expected him to fail in the attempt. Particularly, this was at a time when Jorah was sending him reports that Drogo wasn't feeling inclined to go to Westeros anytime soon. This failed attempt on Drogo's pregnant wife Daenerys would have been enough to change his mind. Interestingly, both Tyrion and Daenerys' mothers died giving birth to them, and both of their fathers were killed by Lannister, Tyrion and Jaime respectively. They were also both treated cruelly by their siblings and were despised by them for killing their mothers. Viserys to Daenerys, Cersei to Tyrion. Tyrion's rundown of the prospective political situation in Westeros if Daenerys Targaryen returns only does include all of the great houses of the Seven Kingdoms. He mentions the Targaryens, gone, the Starks, defeated, and probably also including their Tully allies. The Lannisters, apparently including their allies, the Boltons and Freys, the Baratheons, the real ones under Stannis, and the Tyrells. It says that of these, only the Tyrells might switch to her side. However, he omitted any mention of House Greyjoy, House Martell, and House Arryn. A major point is actually that at this stage of the war, those who have been fighting for years are nearly exhausted. The Starks, the Lannisters, and Baratheons. Well, because the Arryns and Martells have remained neutral so far, they still have full and fresh armies, which are now in a position to alter the game board significantly. Like the Tyrells, the Greyjoys have been in the war so far, but they haven't been very badly bloodied yet. Their main action was to declare their independence from the mainland and to make a few opportunistic raids against the north, a few which were defeated by the Boltons, but their losses numbered in the dozens, not hundreds. Littlefinger even told Cersei that he intends to use the Vale's armies to launch an invasion of the north. And it's further odd that Tyrion doesn't mention the Martells, as due to the Lannisters, Lannisters murdering Elia Martell and her children, the Martells will revenge on the current regime and would be obvious allies for Daenerys. Tyrion may have thought that as Marcellus betrothed to Tristan Martell, the trouble could have ended, but considering the recent death of Oberyn Martell, the rivalry between Dorne and the Iron Throne could be exploited. During Robert's rebellion, the Tyrells and Martells fought on the Targaryen side, though this is no guarantee of their future loyalty. The Tyrells tend to just side with whoever they think is going to win in any conflict. The Starks and Tullys, Lannisters, Baratheons, and Arryns fought against them. The Greyjoys didn't think the civil war on the mainland was really their concern and stayed out of it, only nominally siding with the rebels after the death of Prince Rhaegar at the Battle of the Trident, when it's clear the Targaryens would lose, which is also what the Lannisters did. In the novels, Daenerys is waiting to kill Drogo. Her brother Viserys thinks that if they invade Westeros, the Martells, Greyjoys, and Redwynes would be most eager to support them. The Martells, because they're still upset at King Robert and the Lannisters about the death of Elia Martell, and the Greyjoys because they came to hate Robert after the subsequent Greyjoy rebellion. House Redwyne is a Lena Tyrell's family. She was born in Lena Redwyne and controls the Redwyne fleet, one of 3 remaining standing navies in Westeros. Viserys has the Redwynes in particular as such a staunch Targaryen loyalist, though I hope the Tyrells will come around as well. Viserys was not politically skilled at all, however, and some of his assumptions may have been naive. The Greyjoys did hate Robert, but they also care most about themselves. Viserys also thought that the commoners of Westeros were just waiting for him to return as king, when as Jorah explained to Daenerys that this was pure fantasy. Though Daenerys has been empathetic to the slaves and the poor before, at this point, that is the whole point of her liberation of Slaver's Bay. Her conversation with Tyrion in this episode is the first time she specifically criticizes the great houses of Westeros, including her own, for their treatment of small folk. She claims she will break the systematic warring of the great houses in Westeros, which includes House Targaryen, as it is crushing the small folk. Grandmaster Pycelle, of all people, has turned on Cersei, but summoning her uncle Kevin Lannister back from Casterly Rock to rule as the new head of the king. Even if Cersei manages to evade the trial by the faith the two of them have no intention of letting her wield power again, as she was running the Iron Throne, and House Lannister into the ground with her inept leadership and increasingly erratic behavior. Previously, he was Cersei's loyal lackey on the small council, and was even the spy for her against Tyrion, as seen in Season 2's What Is Dead May Never Die. Pycelle had a lengthy scene with her father Tywin Lannister back in Season 3, which was deleted for time, but was included in the Blu-ray set, which goes a long way to explain his actions now. The scene was also released for free on the Game of Thrones official YouTube account. In the deleted scene, Pycelle explains that he is loyal to Tywin because he has built House Lannister into the strongest house in Westeros, and he genuinely believes that the strongest house is the only one that can maintain peace and order over the fractious lords of the Seven Kingdoms. Tywin bluntly asks him what he will do if the Lannisters are no longer the strongest house. And he simply says that hopefully that will be generations from now, when he has long since been rotting comfortably in his grave. Cersei isn't the effective leader that Tywin was, however, and throughout the season Pycelle has been gradually disgusted with how she has been weakening the Lannisters, stacking the small council with sycophants, just as the disgraced ex-Maester Qyburn, whom he vocally disapproved of, and simply dealing with the debt crisis to the Iron Bank, entering into a feud with Margaery Tyrell that needlessly alienated badly needed allies, and foolishly rearming the Faith Militant, blindly assuming they will be totally loyal to her, when she actually handed the High Sparrow his own army that the Lannisters can't control. She also simply ignored all of his rational advice and slighted him as if he had been disloyal, made him nothing but loyal, betraying Eddard Stark, Tyrion, and Jon Arryn for her, and even keeping the secret that her children were all really born of incest. Pycelle is still loyal to House Lannister, but not to Cersei anymore. The paving stone that Lena Headey laps up water from in a prison cell was made from plastic and covered in cellophane to keep it hygienic. Roose Bolton explains that his forces have repaired Winterfell's walls and can withstand a siege, as they have stockpiled enough food to last 6 months, while winter is weeks away and heavy snowstorms have already slowed Stannis' advance. If Stannis tries to simply surround Winterfell, his forces would starve in the snow before the Bolton garrison does. Councils in Westeros are used to stockpiling food supplies for months or even years at a time during winter, so sieges can be quite lengthy if the garrison manages to gather enough food stores beforehand. In the novels, Jon Snow mentions that centuries ago when the Starks fought the Boltons, they were to surround and starve their castle siege of the Dreadfort. But the siege ultimately lasted for 2 years before the Bolton garrison ran out of food. Ramsay's line that, quote, we had hard and leave a feast for the crows, is name dropping the title of the fourth novel of the book series, A Feast for Crows. One of the points behind the name is that Westeros has been devastated by the ongoing War of the Five Kings. Tens of thousands are dead, and entire swaths of Riverlands have been reduced to burnout devastations. Even those who technically won the early phases, such as Cersei or the Boltons, are just like crows fighting over the corpse of what little is left of the Seven Kingdoms. Bolton scouts report that Stannis Baratheon's army numbers 6,000 men, though half of them are mounted. For the last episode, Ramsay explained that Stannis had bolstered his forces with thousands of foreign sellswords. He was to hire these with new loans from the Iron Bank of Braavos off-screen, while he was reconsolidating at the wall in the first half of the season, a substantial condensation from the novels, which major subplots involve Stannis trying to convince the bank for even larger loans, and the bank's growing acceptance as they become frustrated with Cersei and Tommen. Stannis said last season that he had about 4,000 men left. Visually, he had about 3,000 men at the battle for the wall, assuming several hundred beyond that were left in his supply train, or that he left a small garrison behind a Dragonstone, as he did in the novels. Thus, Stannis seems to have hired anywhere between 2,000 to 3,000 sellswords who were still with his army. Sansa Stark does not return to Winterfell in the novels and never even meets the Boltons, much less marries Ramsay. Therefore, she does encounter Theon/Reek again. At the end of the most recent novel, she still thinks Bran and Rickon are dead. For Season 5, the production team built expansive, fully realized sets on the streets and buildings of Braavos. They used a likely sequence in which Arya Stark walks around the canals in her Lana persona. Actress Maisie Owens was also excited after years of wearing the same plain costume because she was still pretending to be a comrade boy. She finally got an interesting new costume in this season, switching to Bravo-style clothes. Williams greatly enjoyed being able to symbolically throw away the boring traveling clothes she wore in the Riverlands for over 3 seasons, since Season 2 began. As Michelle Clapton recounted, quote, Macy was very, very keen to get rid of that last costume. She said, please, can I burn it? End quote. Arya uses the name Lana for her false persona. In the novels, she actually called herself the Cat of the Canals. A reference to Sir Farrell's training, which urged her to be agile like a cat, and to marry her mother, Catelyn Stark. Arya in the TV series is older and wiser during her training, however, so she probably realized that using a variant of her mother's name from her past life was a bit conspicuous, and thus just picked a different name entirely. Lana is actually the name of a minor character in Braavos, a prostitute mentioned in passing. It would seem that the TV writers reused that name to try and still use a name that matched the Braavos setting. Small in-joke reference is made to Arya's Cat of the Canal student in the novels. However, just as she says that she walks to the canals every day with a cart, a cat crosses her path in the street. It's not anachronistic to the time periods that Game of Thrones is based on for the Thin Man to sell insurance policies. There was evidence that the concept of insurance has been known and practiced by Chinese and Babylon traders between 3rd and 2nd millennia BC, respectively. It's even more appropriate for Braavos, an economic powerhouse akin to the Dutch Republic, Genoa, or Venice, all states where uninsured ships had little chance of successful ventures. The novels actually do mention merchants in the free cities buying and selling insurance. Apart from the Thin Man himself, A triarch of Atlantis named Vogaro was specifically said to sell insurance to ship owners against the hazards of the sea. The paperwork that Sailor presents to the Thin Man is actually the first time that a map featuring both Westeros and Essos has appeared on screen, though they're both shown in the opening credits sequence. The newly drawn map accurately depicts Westeros and all of Essos east to Slaver's Bay, but not to Karth. It's worth noting that the course shown to the Thin Man goes through the smoking sea vault of Valeria. The Thin Man looks through the paperwork until he sees this course, at which point he declares that he can't insure the sailor. Only 3 episodes ago, Jorah and Tyrion took this route and supposedly said that the smoking sea was so dangerously for pirate spirit. Hardhome won several episodes and won several Emmys. Hardhome won several Emmy Awards for 2015. Outstanding editing for a drama series, outstanding mixing for a comedy or drama series, 1 hour. Interesting. So far, I think this episode is pretty darn good, and yeah, things are definitely not looking good for Jon and the Wildlings after what happened to Hardhome, so there's that. So, yeah. So, overall, I give Hardhome 4 Iron Thrones out of 5. When I tune in tomorrow as we take a look at the penultimate episode of the series, The Dance of Dragons. So, until then, remember everyone, winter is coming.